What happens when a sanctioned dictatorship starts using Bitcoin and stablecoins to survive, and years later its leader is captured, with rumors of a hidden 600,000 Bitcoin stash hanging over the market? Today, we're going to break down what is fact, what is speculation, and what this whole Venezuela story really means for Bitcoin. For more than a decade, Venezuela lived under heavy U.S. sanctions. Banks shut the doors, oil revenues were blocked, and access to dollars became extremely limited. To keep the government functioning, the regime had to find assets that couldn't be easily frozen or intercepted, and that pushed Venezuela into two things: gold and crypto. First, the gold. Over several years, the Venezuelan central bank and the Orinoco mining region exported billions of dollars in gold through countries like Turkey and the United Arab Emirates and Switzerland. This gold was refined and sold on the global market, giving the regime access to hard currency they could actually use. Second, the crypto. Over time, Venezuela experimented with the petro, state-issued digital currency, with Bitcoin mining, and, most importantly, its state oil company PDVSA began shifting oil payments into USDT, Tether instead of traditional bank transfers. By 2024 and 2025, a large portion of Venezuelan crude oil exports was being settled in stablecoins. That meant U.S. sanctions and blocked bank accounts couldn't stop the money from moving. So the pattern is clear. Sanctions pushed Venezuela into gold, and gold plus oil revenue pushed them into crypto. Now let's talk about the big headline. The idea that Venezuela secretly accumulated 600,000 bitcoins, worth around $60 billion. This number didn't come from blockchain analysis. It came from investigative calculations by journalist Bradley Hope and others, based on how much gold the regime sold, how much oil revenue moved through USDT, and what Bitcoin's price was during those years. If a big portion of that money had been converted into Bitcoin when it was cheap, the total could add up to hundreds of thousands of BTC. But we need to be accurate here. This is a theory. It is not proven. Public blockchain trackers only confirm a few hundred bitcoins connected to Venezuela, not hundreds of thousands. So the 600,000 BTC idea should always be presented as a possible scenario, not a verified fact. Now everything becomes more interesting because Maduro has been captured and taken into U.S. custody. And this raises a massive geopolitical question. If Venezuela really does hold a huge hidden Bitcoin reserve, and if the United States manages to obtain the private keys, what happens next? There are three major scenarios. Scenario 1, the long legal freeze. This means the U.S. justice system locks the coins while courts, creditors, victims of the regime, and government agencies fight over who is entitled to them. In this scenario, the Bitcoin would sit untouched for years. If it's a large amount, removing it from circulation would reduce global supply and could be extremely bullish for Bitcoin's long-term price. Scenario 2, the strategic reserve. The U.S. government could decide that the seized Bitcoin becomes part of an American strategic reserve, similar to the gold reserves at Fort Knox. That would permanently take those coins off the market. Again, lower supply means higher long-term value for everyone holding Bitcoin. Scenario 3, the fire sale. This is the worst case for price. The U.S. could dump a large amount of Bitcoin onto the market to recover funds. We have a real-world example. When Germany sold around 50,000 Bitcoin confiscated from criminals in 2024, it caused a double-digit price drop. If hundreds of thousands were sold at once, the impact could be brutal. But this scenario is considered less likely because it would crash the price so much that the government wouldn't actually recover the amount they want. And realistically, Donald Trump does not want to go down in history as the president who crashed the entire Bitcoin market. So what do you actually do with all this information? First, separate facts from narrative. It is not a proven fact that Venezuela actually holds 600,000 BTC. That number is an estimate and should always be presented as such. However, it's worth remembering that Venezuela was one of the first countries in the world to launch its own national cryptocurrency with the Petro back in 2018, showing that the regime has experimented with crypto for years. Second, understand the signal behind the story. Whether the hidden stash is 600,000 BTC, 60,000, or 6,000, the message is the same. This is the moment for Bitcoin to demonstrate its potential as a sovereign asset, one that could surpass gold, but only under the right conditions. Economic sanctions between nations will become less effective. States in power will try to control Bitcoin, freeze it, or even stockpile it. And every time large amounts of Bitcoin move from liquid and sellable to locked, frozen, or held as a strategic reserve, the coins in your wallet become a little bit rarer and therefore more valuable.